President-elect Donald Trump attended the latest SpaceX launch in Brownsville, Texas Tuesday. Elon Musk, son Don Jr., Senator Ted Cruz, and a chorus of GOP lawmakers joined as they watched Starship launch. SpaceX was supposed to catch the rocket as it descended back to Earth, but a mere 4 minutes after it deployed, the mission director called the catch off and ordered the booster to crash into the Gulf of Mexico instead. The test was a setback for Musk, who Trump has called a super genius and who has become increasingly influential in Trump world. Meanwhile, Musk's SpaceX and Jeff Bezos' Amazon are going after the National Labour Relations Board in response to accusations of violating workers' rights amid attempts to unionize. Attorneys for Amazon and SpaceX argued separately in federal appeals court Monday that the NLRB structure is unconstitutional. Basically, the legal teams maintain that the structure gives the board unchecked power to shape and enforce labor law.
If the judges rule in favor of the companies, it would spell trouble for workers wanting to unionize and to take action in pursuit of better wages and working conditions. Labor has enjoyed the backing of President Biden for the past 4 years, and he enjoyed their backing. But that could be upended under the new Trump administration, Trump famously doing much better with labor than previous Republicans, and with Elon Musk at the helm of a new commission focused on dismantling government bureaucracy. Now, it's unclear whether the NLRB is itself on the chopping block. I'll start by saying I don't know that it was a setback necessarily that they didn't catch the rocket. We wanted them to catch the rocket because they did last time, but these are all kind of planned experiments in
a mild
space.
Disappointment.
Yes,
perhaps.
they will. It's nice to catch it, but I think it's still very cool that they pulled it off, and I am hopeful, concerned that Elon's increasing duties as a political figure distract from the important task of building spaceships, which is where his greatest value add is.
Maybe if he had stuck to building spaceships, I would be fonder of Elon Musk than I actually am for his various antics, mostly in terms of his stewardship of what was once Twitter. Look, I mean, Trump attending the spaceship launch, whatever, like he's fine to go wherever he likes. I just think that, because of Elon Musk's sort of antics, I think they tend to distract from the fact that, to my mind, Elon Musk's basically an oligarch. Like, he's the world's richest man, spending more than $100 million, some say 120 million, some say 200 million, in the service of electing a president who's his, bestie or whatever. And then he simultaneously has massive contracts with the federal government, specifically through SpaceX, and he is now in a position to decide at some level what to winnow away from the federal bureaucracy. It is just someone who, to my mind, has simply bought very significant political influence.
Yeah, it's something to watch out for. I like Elon more than you do, and I think his contributions to SpaceX in particular are potentially monumental for the development of our species and ought to be supported and praised. I do not, and I agree with him that vast areas of the government should be cut. He has also benefited from favorable government policy, certainly, and we got to watch out for any kind of subsidies or favorable such and such, and journalists can stay on that, and that's absolutely fine. In terms of the NLRB, I'm sure we have very serious disagreements.
Major schisms there.
I think the extent to which labor regulation or the NLRB violates, makes it harder for companies to operate, including by violating what I would say are free speech precepts. The only time I've really dealt with the NLRB or covered them in great depth was when they went off after a friend of mine in conservative media for joking that he was going to send his employees to work in the salt mine if they complained too much. It was clearly a joke, and it was interpreted by no one who worked there as like an actual threat. And some third-party liberal lefty progressive person who is not part of the organization filed a complaint, and sure enough, the NLRB took action, and he had to, I forget exactly what the resolution was. It was just something like you had to put up a poster saying, no, I'm not actually going to see you. These are your rights, X, Y, and Z. It was all very silly.
You're safe from salt mines.
You're safe from salt
So
mines.
look, I'm not, that sort of example is obviously a fairly frivolous complaint. My view on it is pretty simple, though, of course, in diametric opposition to yours. I think that workers clearly have a right to organise. I am an old school enough person from the other side of the Atlantic to believe that the interests of capital and the interests of labour tend to be antagonistic toward one another. I think that workers have very little power on an individual basis, which is the whole point that the labour movement exists, to enable people who have very limited financial or other bargaining power individually to bargain collectively and to obtain fair wages and other good working conditions. You need some mechanism to enforce that. I would say on the merits of the case, I find them somewhat disingenuous, because the argument, I think, is partly that the NLRB just sort of issues its ruling without any court, without a jury. But NLRB rulings are, for a start, you can appeal them to an actual appellate court, and to enforce them you need court backing to do that. It is not just a diktat. So I don't find the argument persuasive in its specifics, but I find it more broadly just an attempt by extraordinarily rich men, two of the richest men on earth. I'm not sure if Bezos is number two, Elon certainly number one, to hollow out the rights of workers, which are legitimate rights in my view.
Look, I don't have any problem with private union, with workers seeking better working conditions and getting together, and there needs to be some oversight and regulation. I don't really have much problem with that. My problem with unions is more with the public employee unions, who I think have much different incentives. On some level, the employees of Amazon or Ford or whatever it is don't want to they don't want to bankrupt the company. There has to be some meeting of the minds. The incentives are a little bit different for public employees unions, where you're never going to the company is the U.S. government, and the incentives are totally different. You're not going to bankrupt it, and because it's just going to draw more of our taxpayer dollars to support it, and also I think and how that intersects with political giving and spending and donations is much more fraught than it is in the private sector. So unions have accomplished a lot of good for some workers. There's been corruption in the leadership of unions, even overlapping with organized crime back in those days and everything. So I tend not to want to paint too rosy a picture of their behaviors, but I'm sure there's a happy medium to be found.
Well, I mean, if we banished every organization or body that had shown some sign of corruption in its leadership, at some point we'd ban literally every organization on earth, I think. And I just think that the achievements of unions are often underestimated in terms of securing very fundamental protections for American workers that would not otherwise be there.
We'll be back with more... No, that does it for us today on the show. We will not be back with more Rising right now, but we will be back with more Rising tomorrow, and we hope you tune in as well. In the meantime, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can get your podcast fix. We'll see you tomorrow.